100 Years, 100 Voices. A St. John Centennial Oral History project conceived and produced by WSJS Radio, where every day is history.
Good morning, this is WSJS Radio on Everyday's History. Today I'll be interviewing my dad, Mark Israel Bejar, for the 100 Years, 100 Voices program.
Good morning, St. John's.
Our first question. When and why did you attend St. John's?
I started attending St. John's in 1986 for ninth grade. My family had decided that we were going to do high school in St. John's, and fortunately I was accepted.
Good. Now, what do you most remember about being a student here? The environment, whether in school and or the Condado area, particular classes, teachers, friends, events, clubs, activities, special visitors, projects, or other things?
I have to admit that the most important thing back then was being able to eat lunch outside of school. It'd be lunch period, and we would walk around Condado looking for anywhere that we could afford to have lunch, anywhere but the cafeteria. Probably my most important memories have to do with sports and the school play. Actually, in 1986, when I started, the World Cup had just ended, and there was a soccer fever, like always after the World Cup. So the first thing I did when I got into St. John's was join the soccer team, and I was part of that for 4 years. Somehow, I got involved in the school play and ended up being the lead my junior year and my senior year. We did, my junior year, we did Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I was Dr. Van Helsing. And then my senior year, it was Don't Drink the Water by Woody Allen, and I got to play, I can't remember the character's name, but in the original version, it was played by Jackie Gleason, who was a big fat comedian, very famous during the 50s, 60s. And, part of my costume, I had to wear a pillow under my shirt and pretend I was a big fat tourist. The truth is, I was already a Dracula fan. And when the school play ended up being Bram Stoker's Dracula, I just had to be a part of it. And the English teacher, Mr. Hull, originally did not find me fit enough to be the lead. And, I was a junior back then, so he picked a senior. For some reason, probably the amount of lines, the senior couldn't hack it. And Mr. Hull turned to his great English student, Mark Bejar, to come and save the day. And it ended up being one of the best experiences in my life. Years later, one of my cousins who attended St. John's as well told me, "I can't believe you were in the school play." And I'm like, "How did you know?" Mr. Hull played Dracula for the whole class, and this must have been 15, 20 years after the fact. So imagine how incredibly proud I am of being a part of that.
What do you believe most helped you as an adult?
I cannot point only one thing out. As I mentioned earlier, I started playing soccer here in St. John's in 1986, and that's something I still do every Saturday. So, because at this age, staying fit is very important, especially with 3 children. Why soccer? I don't know. It wasn't as popular a sport then in Puerto Rico as it is now, and I guess having access to something that was so far away that St. John's provided was part of what drew me to it. It was an exotic sport back then. It wasn't something that everybody knew about back then, and St. John's had the presence of mind to have a team way back then already. So, also, the school play influenced me a lot. It helped me come out of my shell. I'm a businessman now. I always knew I was going to be a businessman. Yet somehow I was drawn to the school play, and I guess learning to speak out in public and not having stage fright helps you out later in life when you have a meeting with somebody you don't know, when you have to meet people from other cultures, that you're able to express yourself feeling confident.
I definitely agree with that.
Of course, the education is still very important. It's the most important. Yet, however, the memories are tied with other things. But the education and the great teachers we had here, and as I look back now, the small class size was the most important. I am part of a family business that does business in Puerto Rico, in the United States, in China, in India, in the Dominican Republic, in Peru. And back then, it was just a local business. And now it's projecting itself as something global. And there's no doubt in my mind that the education that I received here was essential for a Puerto Rican business seeing itself as something bigger than the island, seeing itself as part of the whole world. And there's no doubt in my mind that the teachers and the curriculum of St. John's prepared me for those things.
Tell me about your favorite teachers.
Let me start with Chago. I can't remember his last name, but he was a blind math teacher, and he was great. Whatever he taught you, it was almost like he would teach yourself. And there's no better way to learn any subject. There was also a very popular Jorge Rivera, who always made sure that not only did you learn your geometry, but that you never stepped out of line. It was almost like he felt a responsibility to not only teach you the subject of math, but teaching you the subject of life. That's the second math teacher. The third math teacher, Cheo. Now, this guy, his passion for the subject was contagious. And I gotta thank him for keeping me interested in things that when are difficult, maybe as a teenager you want to turn your back on. I would say that his passion was what kept me interested in such difficult subjects, pre-calculus, algebra. There was Miss Gomez from chemistry and physics, always ready to challenge you a bit further. If you got a good grade, then she would let you know that there was so much more for you to learn. And in that sense, I'm very thankful to her. There was Miss Facundo, the Puerto Rican history teacher, and getting the Puerto Rican history version from a University of Puerto Rico teacher certainly opened my eyes to history and how many different ways there are of interpreting it. It was essential in building my identity as a Puerto Rican. Challenging the notions of what Puerto Rico is or isn't. That there's always a history behind the history. That was Miss Blanca Facundo. Miss Gutierrez, the world history teacher, which opened my eyes to this big world back then that seems so small now. Back then there was no cell phones, no internet. When you had to get information, you actually had to dig it up, go to the library, learn the Dewey Decimal System and find that book in the library. The encyclopedia. It was an interesting time, and St. John's definitely gave us the tools, not only to succeed back then, but to succeed still today. Thanks for that question, Nobes.
What was your first memory of St. John's?
My first memory of St. John's is how all the students would gather in the Hurricane Center on every Friday, and there was a segment that the student council will provide, and it was a chisme section, and for 10-15 minutes, somebody very funny would go up and talk to the whole school about the doings of the student body, the what some thought was secret, but was actually not so secret things that people were doing. And as as corny as it sounds, it was funny because the Hurricane Center seemed to me huge back then, and yet we all knew each other, and we could all laugh at each other, and it was I don't know if it was a product of the times or what, but it within the student body, we all felt a unity, like it was a small community. It was very, and that's my first memory. That feeling, everybody listening and laughing, and even the guy who or the girl who was being spoken about. It was funny. It was presented in a way that didn't hurt anybody. It was just, and that was my first memory of St. John's. And it's funny because the friends of St. John's that I still have today, I would say we still have that sense of humor of, hey, I know what you did, and it was definitely something that touched me. Back then, the student body was smaller than it is today, and the teachers were very accessible. And in fact, there was a time of day given at least once or twice a week where you would be free to, it was called the Resource Center, and you would be free to use the resources of the school in whatever area you needed help. If you needed help with history, the Resource Center would give you time and access to find what you needed, and things like that. I don't know exactly how it works today, but I feel like the student body is a bit bigger, so we lose a bit of the intimacy that we had back then. One of the reasons my parents sent me to St. John's was because the largest concentration, we're a Jewish family, and the largest concentration of Jewish students in the island back then, and still today, was here in St. John's. Nowadays, there's Chinese, there's Indians, Germans, Russians, and I think it reflects, and St. John's has been able to reflect the times that the world isn't so homogeneous anymore, so small. Anywhere you'll find people from all different sorts of backgrounds, and St. John's was always back then and still today eager to expose its students to such diversity. One of my Spanish teachers, Santiago Merlo, he was a very challenging teacher. And one of the projects, we had to read the great Latin American novels. And I was lucky to have been assigned Bestiario by Julio Cortázar. But the challenge wasn't actually reading the book. The challenge was preparing the presentation to give to the class about the book. So not only did I have to read the book, I had to go to the Inter-American University library and find out what different experts, what they thought of the book, and present it to the class. Now, the exercise in itself was something that was repeated throughout my academic and professional career many, many times. You have to familiarize yourself with something. You have to dig deep, become a sort of expert on it if you want to do well. Now, I remember giving that presentation and repeating myself once or twice, and actually, it affected my grade. And if it had not affected my grade, maybe it wouldn't have taught me what it. I wouldn't have learned the lesson as well as I did. The fact that there's always room for improvement, I know you guys are getting taught that still today. I can see it. I've met all your teachers. I've had one-on-ones with them, and I'm talking to my daughters, and I know that they're pushing you still today, and that's good. That's why, you guys are a second generation St. John's students because of that tradition of excellence of pushing for the best. St. John's in our family, girls, is a tradition. Since 1986 till today, there has always been at least one Bejar on the student roll. That's 28 years. For more than a quarter of a century, part of our family history is here in St. John's. And I have a 9-month-old at home, so we could probably lengthen that streak to about 44 years. So St. John's is an integral part of our family history because our family, like many others in Puerto Rico, are searching for excellence.
Moving on to the last question. How do you feel that St. John's is turning 100 years old?
I'm ecstatic. It's amazing to have anything last for that long. And it's amazing for anything to last for that long and do well for an entire century. But not only is it doing well, I actually think it's doing better, that it's still improving. So in this particular case, 100 years old doesn't mean old. You know, it means 100 years of excellence. That's what it means. Mark Bejar, class of 1990.